crowd, Mike.
That's the end of the day.
Yeah, it certainly is.
It's like nobody's walking around there. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a workshop session. We're here to listen to Mike Harrington from Lamont Engineering, who has come up with a proposal to solve our water issues, which we have reviewed over the past couple of years. Interestingly enough, I don't know, Mike, if you want to present the latest numbers, or just
I don't.
John, you want to?
I guess I have the numbers of John.
Because we just got the fourth quarter report. The third quarter we were over by 5.9. What is it? UGLs.
That's parts per billion, micrograms per liter.
Okay. The third quarter we were over the 80% level, which was is what their cutoff is. We were up to 85.9. This time, however, we're under, fourth quarter report, we're under the 80 microgram per liter limit. So as we've known for the past couple of years, we bounce up, we bounce down, we go here, we go there. And that's why Mike Harrington is here, to so we can discuss this solution, or proposed solution. And I should just tell you, I know you're the only one here, generally what we're going to do is in a workshop, we're going to listen to Mike, we'll ask questions, and I guess if there's nobody here but you may as well consider yourself, part of the family, I guess. And because normally we want to get the work,
Right.
we want to get the information out and let the board talk before we open it up to the public, because you're the only public.
Okay.
We'll just
There's room for everyone to sit at the table.
There is room for everyone to sit at the table.
Well, if
Mike
no
will
one
have
else
to
comes
use the
in.
chairs.
As long as no one else comes in.
Yeah, as long as
Move
nobody else-
everybody back.
If anybody comes in, they're a second-class citizen.
All right.
That's right. So Mike, don't take an hour and a half. Do what you need to do.
All right. Well,
How's that?
first things first.
All right.
One of the last meetings, we said we're going to submit to DOH for the tank mixing system. It was submitted. They've not yet reviewed anything. I checked in with them as late as today, and it just didn't.
Is this the bubbler?
Yes, storage tank mixer.
Bubbler, like that.
Yes. So it's just an FYI. That's where that is.
Just to clear, is this actually a bubbler or just a mixer?
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry, I should have caught what Tom said. This is just the mixer. It's part one of the three-stage mixing and aeration system. Three component being the mixer, which we're putting in now. The later part, if we get funding because it's more expensive, is the spray aeration system and the tank ventilation. So those are the three
So there's no
pieces.
bubbler at all?
Not with this. This
Even
is
with
just
all-
mixing.
even with all three, okay.
This is just mixing. Yep. It's the first step that, even if you use another treatment technology, is a good thing to have with the size of your tank and that sort of thing. It helps with icing and.
That's right, and it's gonna improve the overall water quality just by not having any dead spots in the tank, making sure it's completely mixed at all times. Because you got colder water coming in, so you have difference in temperatures and you have different stages in the tank. And this just gets rid of all that.
Okay, so following the agenda, I put it together, we might as well at least try to start following that. What I would hope to do is just to discuss the report, any questions you may have had on the draft that you received electronically. I think there was a couple hard copies sent. And just remind the board that
I printed out the whole package before I came and didn't know we were gonna have one here, so you can,
Oh, okay, thank you.
public documents.
oh, well, I have actually, I have this as well. And just to remind the board that the strategy here was to identify things that might be needed. They may not all be needed. Worst case scenario, they will all be needed, but There's an opportunity for funding that Kerry Warner has brought to the village's attention. We were aware of it. It seemed like it might be the best opportunity for the village to get funding for this problem. Just a reminder, if you qualify or if you get the funding, it would be 60% grant. So with the idea that you're not going to get something, it's going to be hard to get grant on into the future. Let's identify all the pieces that might be needed. No sense identifying a couple things now and then in 5 years when this project is done, something else comes up that you realize, geez, why didn't we throw that in there? So that's my job, is to at least make you aware of the items that you might want to address, and then you guys decide. And I think the beauty of what we're looking at now is we can review everything from an environmental impact perspective now, and then you can decide after you know about your funding how much you want to do, and of course how much you want to spend. Because even if you get grant, you still have to come up with the 40% share, and I'm realizing that's, you know, that still could be a big nut. So that all has to be considered. So with that said, the report identified all the different components that might be needed with your system to first and foremost to combat the disinfection byproduct DBP issue. We've talked a lot about the different options. One would be this tank aeration system that we just described, this 3-component system. Quite honestly, I feel that will work for you, and it's probably going to be the lowest cost for you. If we move forward with that, start to implement it, do some testing, and find that it's not getting you low enough below that 80 part per billion threshold on the THMs and the 60 part per billion threshold on the haloacetic acids, the catch-all that we know is going to work is granular activated carbon filtration. It's currently what's at the county plant that has knocked things down enough so that Clifton Park's in compliance, but not far enough so that you're in compliance. And I think the common understanding is that they're just not putting all their water through granular activated carbon. Again, we're confident it's going to work because when they put in temporary carbon on the line, and I think was in Ballston. I don't know where they put that in.
Rolinski, or was that right on Route 67 at the Stewards?
I think the feed to Clifton
Trail?
Park.
Yes.
I guess where it is, you know, it was very close to Round Lake, and you guys, your numbers dropped like a stone at that point. So again, I'm very confident it's granular carbon, activated carbon is going to solve the problem if you have to as the belt and suspenders. I do think, however, that the 3-component aeration system that's going to cost you around $100,000, not $20,000 for this mixer, I think that will probably be able to get your numbers down to around half, maybe a little over half of what the MCL is, which I feel gives John as the operator enough. But of course, he needs to chime in on that. Is that low enough? You know, so when we do implement this, we start getting results, and August is always kind of our telltale. If we get that implemented and we're still too close to this 80, then we may need to, and assuming you have funding, you might need to pull the trigger on carbon filtration at that point. But I almost see this project kind of going in little incremental steps. I do not think, even if you got funding, that we definitely recommend that you do all 3 at once.
What's the carbon granular activated carbon cost?
The units themselves are about 100,000, but then you have a building, you've got all the ancillary stuff, the sewer connection for the backwash, something around 250, 300,000. I put a range in the report, in the narrative, but there's a bunch of components on the detailed cost estimate that add up to that number I kind of just quoted. So the other piece of the treatment is what was recommended or I was questioned about at one of the last meetings, and that is, can we just move the chlorine feed location? Given we are where we are with DOH and EPA, I think I wouldn't want to put all the eggs in that basket that it's going to work. I do think there's merit to it. I followed up with DOH. They said that as long as the chlorine feed equipment can keep up with the higher flow rates that would be downstream of the tank, that it could work. What I do want to point out, though, it's not free. It's not like just moving a little piece of tube from here to here. You have to put vaults and meters, and you have to do a lot of relocation of some infrastructure you have now. So I've kind of put it in the toolbox as a possible thing that, as we get into final design, that we would reconsider and possibly implement. So that handles the treatment piece of the project. Storage and distribution. This falls into the bringing up items that you might want to consider through the process of looking at your system, as you do in such reports. We stumbled on the fact that New York Ave has pretty low operating pressures, and quite honestly below what you're supposed to have in accordance with the regulations. I think these things end up happening because the Department of Health is probably more worried that people have a good supply of water than the optimal pressure. If they had failing wells or
Is there any connection between the pressure issue and the purity issue?
no.
Okay.
No. The only indirect relationship is that we can't do something with the I think we talked about this last, one of the last meetings. You have like 4 or 5 days of storage in your tank. Normally you only have 1 or 2. You can't drop the level of your big tall tank to get 1 or 2 days because of the New York Ave situation. You can't lower the pressure.
Okay.
So everything is connected, but
Are we asking for money to handle the New York Avenue pressure issue in this package?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So we're asking for everything we could possibly ask for,
Yep.
with the firm expectation that we're going to only ask for a portion of that. But since we need to get in line and it takes a long time, we're asking for the moon at this point.
Asking for yes.
Okay.
That is the strategy.
And
That's why I say strategy.
And committed to nothing.
That's correct.
Okay.
The strategy being, you put all these things on there, not only might they correct problems that you've had that might want to correct, but also in the way they analyze your project for are you going to get the money or not, they may, the more little boxes you check off or points you get might help. So yes, what we're planning to do with New York Ave is provide a small a small domestic booster station. And I say domestic because the pump station would only handle the 364 days out of the year flow and not fire flow. To have the pump station handle fire flow would be quite a bit more. We could do that, of course, but it would,
For a minute, let's assume that there's development up here, maybe, I don't know, pick a number, 20 houses.
Yep.
And 10, 15 houses over here. Would that require, what do you call it, fire flow? That's not out of the question.
no, I do understand that, in fact, the side issue with that is if there's development, if you don't get funding, that's something you could have the developer do for you, this pump station. That's kind of how these things work in the extension of systems for the benefit of new development. So, yeah, when I think I was here at the last meeting and I knew coming after me was a pitch for some project, and I'm thinking, yeah, that could directly affect this, because I saw Round Lake Bypass on the board, and I knew it might have been somewhere over here. I know it was turned down, but any project that was, deemed suitable to the village could impact that. And these pump stations can all be built expandable too. So it's not like you're locking yourself into something necessarily, but yeah, the bottom line is we would boost pressure so that the 4, 5, 6 homes served by that would have an increased and compliant pressure. But if that is a known area of development, maybe that kind of comes off the list first if you don't get funding, because if developers are coming here, and that might be something you just have them do for you. The other piece of the distribution system are the valve bonnet bolt replacements. I think you're aware of. Oh,
Mike, can you circulate those numbers?
these.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. Yeah, these are right in the report, and I know I'm using it as a guide to go through the report. And I was going to possibly go through it with everyone later, but might as well do it now. So I think it was a year or two ago, John brought to the attention of the board that some of the valves that were put in the project 20 years ago were found to be have some severely corroded bolts, and they were leading to some failures.
Yes.
And so again, would you ever do 150 of them all at once on your own? No. But here's an opportunity. You have a liability kind of sitting there. If you can get funding for it and do a lot at once, you might get some economies of scale, plus maybe some funding to do it. So, yeah, the 150 valves seems like a lot, but John and I talked today, and he kind of kicked it around. They confirmed it. They had a lot of valves put in the project. Item B on storage and distribution is the tank mixing system that we're already looking at putting in here. Again, DOH has not reviewed it yet. They are aware, or I reminded them of the compliance schedule that we gave them that pretty much said we hope to put this out to bid sometime in February. We'll see if that does anything, but I think for the most part, they really just need to review it for the components that will make it compliant with the program. I don't know that they're going to have a lot to say over the electrical design or anything like that. All right, so item 2C is probably the one that's kind of a little nebulous to folks, and that would be providing a backup connection to a nearby water system. Right now, you have one pipe coming across the Northway.
Yes.
probably in a big sleeve or something, right? It's probably in a casing. It's not, it's directional drill.
Directional drill.
Okay. The reason I thought of this, as I think I've admitted, acknowledged, Saratoga Water Services is one of my clients. That's why I know about how these developments work. Developments come to them, they put in pipe for them, they do this, that, and the other thing.
Aren't they fairly far away from us, though?
Except the corridor between where they are now and here has been opened up for commercial development. It was not open for commercial development. So knowing how things happen up there, they fully expect.
You're talking about the east side of Route 9 between My Way Cafe and Maltaville.
Yes.
That's,
Right here on the map.
yeah, that's, their development, they expect development to move toward Maltaville effectively.
On Route 9?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's that, as far as reading in the paper or whatnot, I understand that corridor's
The
been.
My Way Cafe is at the roundabout on Route 9.
Yeah, so it's north of that, and they're,
Are they the ones supplying to the new stewards?
they were trying, or they were going to, and I think that got,
Yeah.
Get
that
derailed.
didn't happen.
yeah.
Who ended up supplying stewards?
I think they got maybe a direct connection off of the water authority, I believe.
Okay.
Alls I know is the Maltaville thing is still in limbo.
The neighbors weren't very happy, because that was supposed to be part of the deal.
Right.
But the town has just appointed a committee to look into water and sewer services throughout the town. So that may be part of the mix when considering an alternate connection.
Right. So I guess the point being, if through forces beyond what the village does, that water pipe gets close enough to you, you may want to try to connect to it. And you can do it a couple different ways. You can make a formal connection where there's a vault and a pressure reducing valve and all that, or you can just run your water pipe up to 50 feet away from it and put a hydrant in, and they put a hydrant in, and if you need water in an emergency situation, you run a hose over the ground. It could be as simple as that. It could be a lot more complicated as well.
Somebody's got to drill under Route 9.
At some point, if development comes down, that pipe is probably going to get over to the other side, I would think. Unless you know that the commercial is only on the east side of Route 9. I understood it to be
The
both.
west side of Route 9 is Round Lake.
Yes, the east side is the town, and it's rezoned.
That's what I'm talking about,
Right.
so yes.
So those people who couldn't sell their houses because
Right.
they're right on Route 9, now that's going to be commercial.
But there's no corresponding commercial on our side of Route 9 except for a
Okay.
single parcel at the corner of,
Well, the Verizon,
No, there's a couple of them. There's the Verizon building, there's that DeGraff Blue Construction.
that's on
And
Goldfoot.
Zach's.
Goldfoot, the
Yeah.
intersection of Goldfoot Road, okay?
And Zach's.
Yes. But
Yeah, they have nothing to do with,
Zach's already has
They have water.
water.
yeah, the Groff does too.
Yeah.
Not knowing how you'd even receive this, I didn't, as you can tell, I haven't put a lot of effort in it other than the concept that if the water main can get close enough where you can make a connection, because maybe the town of Malta development will get down close enough and there'll be a development in the village that gets the pipe across Route 9, if
Well,
that's a concern.
Wouldn't that be a logical, I mean, we're taking the water from Evans Avenue under the Northway. We've got the mill that wants water, and we have the potential for development. Would it be more likely that the water supply came through the village to the new, to the east side of Route 9?
Yeah, I mean, any of
Well,
these,
the problem would be is if that was to be, the tower as is, it would be no more, everything would be reversed, and we'd be going from the smaller pipe to the larger pipe, and either that or you'd have to pipe a whole pipe up to the tower and then back down again, or just eliminate all that, because there's only one pipe going up there, we'd be backfeeding.
well, all right, yes, you could switch the whole thing around, or you can just have a backup connection,
is
so
what you
it's.
want.
and
That's
it-
what I was getting at, because it seemed like it was too expensive for the village to make these accommodations. Why not let the people on the other side who are gonna develop the thing pay for?
I think that's the model you should follow, if you want, in my opinion, is just wait for the development that is good for you and demand
Right.
this sort of improvement, if you want to call it that, as part of the
But emergency
developers.
connection is pretty vital. If something was to happen under that north way, we'd be done. That's it, we're done.
And again, there was a lot of assumptions made. I just said, knowing how much things cost, I said, let's just assume, we have to assume that you guys are going to put up something to get this connection. And what I did was I assumed, I think, 1,000 feet of pipe you guys would run, possibly with some of that infrastructure that is, I guess I would call it optional. Again, the lowest tech thing would be to have a hydrant and have a
But
hose
that's
connection.
included in the bonding that we're,
I've got here, under 2C, backup connection to SWS. You can see I got 1,000 feet of pipe, that would be in the.
Oh, yeah, I see that. The $275,000.
Yeah, and I got, 100,
okay.
basically $100,000 of the appurtenances related to the piping work. See, if these items are mentioned in this report and included in 2 years, if something comes up, I think you can still point to this and say, let's, assuming you got funding, you could do this stuff, I would not, I think 2C doesn't make sense unless development brings the pipe a lot closer. This is not saying we should run a pipe all the way up to affordable storage, which is where the pipe ends right now.
Sounds
It's
like-
actually, it's a 500 feet this way because there's a new development, I forget, I don't even know what they're calling it. New housing, about 500 feet this side of affordable storage.
Well, I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this particular part of it because, I mean, it's a little far-fetched right now. There's no development. We know where the pipe ends, but John's right. We do, at some point, we have to consider an emergency supply. However that works.
And I don't think there's any other option, really. I mean, you could get another emergency connection from the county, possibly, but then you still have the issue with the water
There
being
is no redundancy for our water,
the quality.
except across the Northway or across Route 9.
Right.
That's it.
Yep.
So for the time being,
The
We just-
Smith Bike Trail all the way down
Right.
to Walensky.
Right. But at least whether this is a backup connection to SWS or some other backup connection to somebody else, it's kind of a line item, a placeholder.
Yep.
That's how I look at it, and that's like the strategy. So, any questions on those items?
I just have a question about this application. So we're gonna fill out an application and say, oh, we'd like $1.56 million, whatever the total is, right? And they'll look at the whole project and let's say they decide to give us a grant for a portion of it. And let's make up a number. They say, oh, well, I don't know how, do they do that? Do they grant just a portion?
No, it would be, it's kind of all or nothing. You're,
Okay.
you're either eligible or not. And as long as that number's below the cap for what they can give you up to $3 million a grant. So your project would be, I haven't done the math, but
So
something in
it's
the
only
fours.
60%
Yeah,
of what you
60%
asked
whatever
for.
That's
you
right,
got.
right. We're asking,
So
Yeah.
we could ask for $5 million and they could give us 3.
that's right. It does the easy
Okay.
math there.
Okay, so, but we're asking for 1.5 million. Let's say, oh, okay, great, and they give us 60% of that, whatever that comes out to, let's say, $900,000. So they make that money available? Or, obviously they're not gonna give us $900,000 if we're only gonna spend 20.
Right. What would happen is if they make the determination, hey, you guys won the lottery, you get this, then what happens is you have to submit a full application to the Drinking Water Revolving Fund for the 40%, to get the loan for the 40% piece. Once you apply for that, that breaks that money free.
Okay, so what my question though is, and this is, so we ask for a loan, for our percentage, and they're gonna grant us this other percentage. And so they basically freeze all this money. They make it available to us.
Yes.
But we only might spend $20,000.
Yep.
And so then the rest of it just sits in limbo. They just...
You have to spend it in 5 years.
Okay, so for 5 years, they're committed to give us a pile of money.
That's why I'm kind of talking about this phase thing. I'm sorry I didn't make that clear.
No,
but that's
because most of the time, people who want to give you money, they want to give you the money. They don't want to say, oh, well, here, we'll give you $14,000, and we do the first part of the project, and lo and behold, the numbers drop drastically, and we're like, okay, well, we're done.
It's just like our CHIPS program.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is they're not going to. So they basically commit to tying up all this money that we may never use.
yeah.
At the end of 5 years, if we only did the valves and the aerator, that's all that we needed to do, and the development doesn't come down the road, and there's nothing else, and we spent $30,000 or whatever the heck it is, or $50,000. They committed to $900,000. Well, they only gave us $50,000. They said they're 5 years up. They're like, okay, well, now we have that much more money to put back in the pool and hand out to someone else.
Yep.
But they tie that money up for all that time. It would seem they would only want projects that were concrete.
Well, but they make you go through the paces in your application. You have to do a bond resolution. You have to kind of really think about all these pieces. And that's where...
Just because we do a bond resolution and make an application doesn't commit us to spending our...
You are absolutely right, but it puts people through that process, and they sometimes don't think that way. The public may, in their chance to comment and vote and demand a referendum, they could say, we don't trust you, you're going to spend all that, and our rates are going to go through the roof. Okay. So the board has to kind of balance what the appropriate project cost will be with the resulting loan.
Okay, so then my final question is, the likelihood of us getting funding is, they're not going to look at this and go, oh my God, they're asking for all sorts of ridiculous stuff they'd never have to do. Why the heck would we give them a grant for all of that when all they're trying to do is remedy a water quality issue? Is how this grant looked at, is it affected by the total amount? In other words, is a $1 million request more likely to be approved than a $1.5 million request?
I get where you're going, and because you're well below the threshold for even the normal DWSRF project, normal DWS grant loan, they'll give you $2 million grant. Water grant is up to $3 million. So I think the ask is reasonable, given the size of the community.
Okay, I just was just trying to figure out how they do this, because it just sort of seems like an odd process.
Putting the pressure, the New York Ave piece in there gets something I think they'd want to fix. The bonnet bolts, who knows how they'll react to that one.
So
we just don't know.
They're only going to give us the money for the parts of the project they believe.
No. They will. from what we've seen is they look at the project as a whole, and as long as it's an eligible component, and I don't know that all of this stuff has been funded on other projects, so.
So let me just following up what Chris said. If we went for the whole $1.5 million, less the grant, go through the loan process, but we did this in stages, and we never spent the $1.5 million.
What they would still do, and clients ask this all the time, is, well, if we only spend 60% of the total, are we going to get all grant? That's the usual question.
No, I realize that.
No, well, all right, well. But the answer is they will always shoot to give you the 60-40 split. So whatever, if you spend $1 million, they're going to try to give you $600,000 in grant and have you borrow the $400,000. That is the goal.
So they could commit, we could all commit, us, the state, to $1.5 million, but somewhere along that 5-year timeline, we may not need to do $1.5 million. And they would give us 60%, we'd have to borrow 40% of whatever it was that solved our water issue.
Within that 5 years, you have to retire your short-term debt. You have to go to the long-term. That's the point at which you decide how much you're going to finally spend. If you've only spent $1 million at that point, you're only going to go long-term borrowing on $400,000, assuming you got the 60% grant.
Right.
And if you get no grant, all this argument kind of goes away. You're only going to do the project that you need to do, presumably, unless you see the benefit in the 30-year borrowing at 3%, which is kind of the market rate, which is probably what you guys will get given your the income statistics here. So yeah. If there's any piece of this that the board feels is totally superfluous, I think we can take it off. It's not.
No, I don't. I mean,
No, I don't think
now
that's
that I
the
understand
point.
how the process
Yeah.
works.
It is hard to believe when it's described that way, but yeah, as long as the piece is eligible,
Well, no, I mean,
They're-
so what
they-
you're saying
they'll
is
fund it.
You put the whole thing in and you see what happens. I mean, for me personally, there are things that we have to do, and there are certainly things that I'm hoping we don't have to do. I certainly hope we can clear this up with a circulator. And if we can't clear it up with a circulator, I'm hoping we can clear it up with a circulator and an aerator. Go to carbon filtration as a long-term maintenance expense. You got a lot of other equipment and costs per year besides the staff and the maintenance and all the rest of that. I mean, that's like the last thing that I want to see. See us do.
Definitely
It's
don't
just-
want it.
Yeah, just don't. Why would you want to spend the money for that?
right.
So, okay. I was just it's such a weird process.
It is, and that's why it's your last shot at this water grant funding, which you're absolutely right. It's a little more open and easy than some of the other funding in the past. So yeah, if we want to do it, let's do it. And there's nothing else anyone wants to add. I mean, that's what I certainly should be asking as well. I think I've asked a lot of the questions to get this list. If we don't end up spending money for some, say the granular carbon filter, and we know we're not going to need that, you can probably put more into the distribution system if you need it. Let's say that the amount budgeted wasn't enough to fix all the valves. There's enough, I call flits, doesn't sound very good, but there's enough flexibility in the program that these things can move around a bit.
So what action do we take tonight?
Well, thank you for getting me back on track. What I would like to come out of tonight for the report is that you authorize me to submit it to DOH. Given how long it's taken to look at this and questions
Do
on
you need your seeker approved before?
no, not for the report.
What order do we need to?
No. The report, alls I would do is, I would take draft off of here, and if there were somebody wanted me to round the budget to some even number, I would do that, or if there was some slight adjustment, take this off or add this back in. I would
The
make.
numbers that you got in there now, are they the same numbers that you just distributed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So the approval to submit that comes before the seeker document?
It should, I guess, because we technically should have an approved scope to go through seeker.
And what would happen, would DOH come back to us and say, well, we like the plan, move to the next step?
Ideally, yes, but what I know from their schedule is they may not look at this till we make our application. It's very possible. Because I have another one of these that I submitted in September, and they really, and part of the application is your engineering report approved? So I called DOH about that, and they said, no, we probably won't look at it till you submit your full application. So
at what
you may not know.
So at what point in the process does this board have to sit down and whittle through this, make a decision about what we want to do and what we...
I think only after you know about funding.
Okay.
I think if you are generally happy with this scope, we put it in.
Well, this is everything, so, I mean, I can't see, unless we want to go through this now and try to take things out.
I'm not.
I would just...
Why would we go through that now?
No.
What we want to do is to take the first step, which
Right.
is the mixer, and see how that works before we have any further discussion. But in the meantime,
This gets you in line for
we
funding.
need a resolution to approve the submission of that document, to take the word draft off.
Okay.
We need a resolution adopting the seeker and authorizing you as
No, you said we don't need to do
deputy mayor to execute.
You said, yeah, but Mike said we didn't need to do the seeker.
Seeker's what we're going to do next.
Okay.
this. Right, but you said you have to have an approved application submitted before you do the seeker process in theory.
So I misunderstood the question. Seeker, no, what I said was that we have to have a scope. And we haven't changed this to change the scope. Our scope's still the same. I'm sorry. Let's say we added something based on this discussion, we might have to back up and say, oh, wait a minute, the seeker doesn't cover that. If we took something out of here, the seeker is broader, so we're still okay.
Okay.
But we just needed to make sure that those two things marry up.
Okay.
And I like that this would be approved before the seeker, because,
But you want the seeker at the same time you do...
yeah, I'm hoping that later tonight we'll do the seeker
Okay.
authorization. So if we want to do this one now, or do you do all the resolutions at
Now,
once at the end?
Yes, I do think we should do it now, but
Yes.
now, as we are in a workshop session, does that matter?
This was a duly noticed meeting, was it not?
Yes.
A workshop is really just another village board meeting by another name. And it's sort of, when you call it a workshop, you're just telling people that you're generally going to focus on one or two
Right.
issues as opposed to have a general meeting. But you can take any action at a workshop meeting that you can take at any other meeting. So you can go ahead and ask for a vote on that document.
I will ask for a resolution to accept the document as proposed. It's not going to be a draft anymore, it'll be an official
Right.
recommendation.
You call it a scope?
What do you call it?
We just want a resolution to authorize the engineer to submit.
The preliminary engineering report to DOH. That's really all I'm doing.
Okay.
So I'll make that resolution.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Want to poll everybody, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Does that include the project summary that you and I discussed?
Project summary. That is included in, the project summary is included right in behind your agenda here. Project description.
Okay. Great. So now the next thing is to adopt the seeker.
Right, and
And the
how
only
much,
two things that I would like the board to know about the seeker is that there is, we are within half a mile of a known nesting site for a bald eagle to the north, although in fact they're really all over the lake, and that there needs to, SHPO has told us we need to have a phase one if we're going to be building anything, an archaeological phase one. And that what this seeker says is we're aware of those limitations and we will address them when and if they need to be addressed in the project process. And other than that, there's nothing in here. I'm sure you've all taken a look at it, but I see nothing in here
Where are they saying
that
that
warrants
the,
discussion.
that the bald eagles were nesting 1/3 mile away? So where?
look at tab
where's that?
5. Everyone look at
Yeah.
tab 5. The two letters are
No,
there.
where's the 1/3 mile away that
North.
north?
Which I'm not sure that's.
Well, see what really happens is when you get into design and you actually know where you're going to put stuff, we have a consultant come out, an endangered
No, I read it all.
species consultant, to look at the area, write a report, and clear it before we do design, or ideally, and definitely before we do construction.
So, but that's the bald eagle. There was a reference here to the long-eared bat and the smartweed. And
That comes, right, the bat came out of another source that you look at when you complete these forms.
Okay.
That was in, the bat reference would be in section 1, which is the environmental assessment form.
Yeah.
That's where all that stuff
Yeah,
is.
unicorn or butterfly somewhere in here once.
Yep.
And that controls when in the calendar year trees may be cut if we need to
Right.
cut trees.
It's
Yeah,
all
we came
good.
across that when we did the Zoom Smith.
Yeah.
Right, and so if you think about it, really the only reason we never ever need to cut trees is if we end up needing to go to Plan C, which is the filtration, where we'd have to put a filter plant up there in the woods next to Victorian Landings.
And then you wouldn't be able to cut the trees.
Right.
Except-
There is the option that you have your specialist look at it and make sure that there was no habitat there, and then you get the okay. But it's kind of down the road a bit on this. And what we do is, it's better if you get a no issue, no impact letter. But when you get these, what we do is we put mitigating language in our determination of significance that explains that we're going to do, just like Tom said, is we're going to do we're going to do what SHPO needs us to do to get things cleared and approved, and we're going to do what DEC and the other endangered species folks need us to do to avoid and that sort of thing. So.
And this report said 1,500 gallons a day of wastewater. Is that for backwashing and charging?
That would be worst case scenario if we needed to backwash the filters. Yes, the carbon filters. And it's not a daily, these things only need to be backwashed and settled in kind of as you start the run. They're not backwashed on a regular basis. So that's kind of like worst day.
And that requires a sewer hookup to do that?
Yeah, other than that, you're into a discharge that's, you got a permit. I mean, you're right there with the sewer with Victorian Landing, so it's not that far away.
I was just wondering, I mean, if you're backwashing the filters, if you're backwashing the filters, one time a year, it's like flushing the hydrants. We don't run them down the sewer, we just open them up and let them go down the storm drains, the water goes where it goes. I just was curious.
But there's a lot of concern over what's in what might be backwashed out. I think people get worried about that. I think if you don't have a sewer nearby, usually backwash from a water filtration plant goes to like a lagoon system. So then you're into more disturbance,
I just was curious why they had it going down a sewer system, since it's the stuff that's in our drinking water. It's not like it's toxic waste.
Except you're some people would say, you're taking out all this,
Once you
the
pass
bad
it,
stuff, and
Well,
we certainly will look at that.
We certainly encourage people not to drink out of the ditch, yes.
So,
That is it.
do you want me to just quickly do an overview of the process?
Nope, everyone's looked at it, we just need to vote.
All right.
So, we need another resolution on it.
We need another resolution, and there are 2 places for you to sign.
The
So-
resolution, by the way, is in tab 4.
Oh, the resolution isn't that. Okay, so, there's the resolution, folks.
And
we
it's-
have-
February is misspelled in the bottom of it. And,
So is Dixie signing this?
Boy, I'll tell you, Heidi.
Man, tough
I
crowd.
did actually read it, and,
Chris didn't get that far, so.
I never read dates.
and when you say.
It's because I did the typing.
When you say unanimous / majority, was that like one or the other, or does that cover everything and you just
See,
leave
what
it
we
like
find
that?
is everyone does these resolutions a different way. So, sometimes we have the list of all the trustees. This is just kind of a form that,
If it's unanimous, we'll circle the word unanimous.
That's what I mean.
If it's not, we'll circle the
Choose-
word majority.
I think that's right. That was the
Okay.
idea.
So, unless someone
Did I wait?
has a problem with this that we should continue discussing, can we get a resolution to move forward with the seeker and approve the seeker environmental review form? Can I get a
I'll
resolution?
make a resolution that, I'm not gonna read the damn thing. That the board, move forward with a seeker negative declaration, and give permission for, the vice mayor.
The vice mayor.
The vice mayor to, sign the paperwork.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Anybody?
No? Paul?
Yes.
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 Yep.
Should I just?
You cross that out, print your name in, write deputy above that, sign it.
Here, I have one for you to sign, a loose one that I need to take back.
So we're gonna circle unanimous?
Yes.
I was going to have him execute this in 3 places, scan it, and then give the original to Kim.
Okay.
How do you want to do it?
We're going to make a full record of all this and for submission and, distribution to all the involved and interested agencies. So we really just needed the signature page.
If I scan this and send this to you, is that not,
That's fine. You'd be able to take it apart.
again, write deputy mayor there, sign there, comma, deputy mayor.
Yep.
If one of the ones he does is this, I think might make it easier for you and me.
Association of Towns. Okay, and
This,
I'm gonna have Kim sign that, please.
Kim? Oh.
I mean, and, obviously you've done the initial work for what we see, but from here on, the actual engineering work that's gonna be done is only gonna be whatever, once any of this goes through, whatever portion of the project we choose to do, right? It's not like the application request comes back to you and says, okay, now we wanna see all the plans for everything or something
No,
crazy
no,
like that. All right, I just don't wanna see some project where you're getting spend $100,000 for engineering to do a $20,000 project.
No,
I
we,
insisted that you do all this garbage for the whole thing.
yeah, by and large, that we get we'll hit the pause button soon. We have to get this all in.
Right.
We have to shepherd this through with the next pieces, but then we just then wait until we hear.
Right, well, if they hear back, they don't, part of the application process isn't coming back to you and saying, well, send us all the plans, all the plans
No,
you're planning on
no,
doing.
no.
Okay.
What's that?
Well, I just get frustrated sometimes when you hear about these towns doing, a $70,000 study on a $100,000 project, and you're kind of like, it's a good project to get the study. We don't have any study.
Thank you. Part 3 of the EAF. Is that what you just had me sign, Tom?
We've done part 3. In fact, that's,
Okay, do you want to do a loose
That's what
one?
you just-
Oh, all right, yeah. Do you want to do a loose one of that?
we can do that, but I'm gonna scan the whole thing, circulate to the board, circulate to you, get the original to Kim.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. I think it's probably premature, but I figure I'll ask. The DWSRF application, I did have Dixie's name in here. This is just so we don't have to track her down for a signature later, or you, or whomever.
The what application?
Should we,
For the drinking water revolving fund?
right,
Oh.
part of the water grant application is having to submit the DWSRF application for the loan part of it. That's the stuff that you're working on, or is it, where's the treasurer that's working on putting that together?
Actually,
Yes.
I have questions, I have it here.
Okay.
Next week.
Is it too late, or do you want to look at some cost projections for what this might cost
For the circulator,
for the whole shebang? Various amounts of borrowing. What?
No, yes, I would, yeah, wouldn't we like to hear a little bit about that?
If you can just have a takeaway and
A little, but yeah, but I mean, we still have to, know about the funding before we're gonna
Yeah.
keep
Oh,
going.
I just felt it was not appropriate for me to show you all this without giving you an idea of what.
It's something for us to chew on.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Right from there.
Where'd they go?
Right there.
So, all right, so I've broken this down into the double blinds separate different project borrowing levels, okay? And I just did 250,000, 500, 750, and $1 million, just across the board.
Okay, there it is.
All right, and what I did was I did 20 and 30 years. DWSRF allows you to go to 30 years. Market rate is currently just below 3% interest. I've top and bottom of each section represent your current number of users, 306, along with the projected users that would be after Hillman and Victorian Landings are fully online. So I added up 129, right? Because there's going to be 49 lots at Hillman now, right?
We're probably up more than 306.
Griffin's Ridge, by the way, now.
Right.
But now that's gonna be closer to 50.
Right. So 80 and 50. I added 130 to the 306. And again, whether the 306 is really 309 or 305, I'm not
Right.
sure. I didn't know. I did not include the municipal. I assume you don't charge yourself.
Nope.
So I took 309 and subtracted the 3 municipal that I was told that there are. So you're currently paying on average, I think my report says, around $600 a year. The average residential users around 600. So if we end up doing a $250,000 project because you don't get any grant money, and we just do whatever, we do what we can do for that amount or something close to that, you might be around $55, $60 a year in terms of increased debt service. If you look at the bottom of page 2, I don't want this to be hidden, bottom of page 2 is increased O&M for the project, okay, with the assumption that you have the spray aeration system with the 5 horsepower motor running half a year or whatever I assumed, and the other smaller motors running at other assumed times. Your electric cost is going to go up a bit. That includes a little bit for the New York Ave booster station as well, but you divide that out by either the 306 or the 435, and you get that. So $250,000 with the existing users, it's going to cost an extra $75 a year for each user. Just as a kind of I guess I would say it's a reasonable bare minimum to look at. I think by the time you put in the spray aeration and maybe do a couple other things, you might be at a $250,000 project. But this just gives you something to start thinking about. This was just done with Excel, their payment. But I confirmed with DOH and EFC the 3% market rate, and I was unsure that they actually went out 30 years if it wasn't a hardship situation, but they got back to me today and said they would do 30 years at the market rate, again, currently 3%.
Where did you get the 600 average? Just that's something
A
we.
flat rate of 200, this year it's 400, and then what, like
Oh,
100
okay.
for usage each bill?
Okay.
kind of?
Yes.
I just did some math and it
Yeah,
kind of
no,
came
no,
out, it was like
yeah.
$595 or something like that.
I'm way over the average, so
Yeah.
what happens when you grow tomatoes?
Yeah.
Mike, if you have that application in electronic form, if you could circulate that to me and Kim, that would be great.
The application.
The spreadsheet, I think.
Our first resolution.
This is the preliminary engineer's report. That's what's going to get submitted to DOH?
That's what we had just approved to submit to DOH.
Right.
Okay, if you have that in electronic form, if you could just,
Right. You have it in draft now. I will take draft off and make one little minor edit that wasn't worth bringing up today, but I'll redistribute to everyone so they know what was submitted to DOH.
Okay.
It'll have a different date.
We'll keep a hard copy in the office.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get you, how many hard copies do we want?
Just one for
Just
the
one.
office.
You want your own hard copy?
No, I keep that, well, yeah, maybe I better put it.
All right, so I'll send 2 and then just do electronic. You had asked questions while we're talking about seeker, and I thought this would come up, the noise and I had a nice color exhibit that I must have misplaced from the last meeting, but essentially what the
It said in this that it was just going to be a 2 horsepower. I thought it was more than that.
inside the spray nozzle is a pump inside the big tank is going to be 5 horse. The ventilator at the top is the 2 horse. That has a sound rating of 75 decibels at 5 feet away. It's probably slightly above the ambient if you're at the top of the tank, but I doubt standing at the bottom you would hear that. I do have a nice.
Above the noise. In the
But what about the fact that the tank is high and the noise is going this way, not?
I don't have the ability to do that analysis, but I have. What I'll do is I'll email to the board this little graphic that shows the noise levels of different things relative to the 75.
would it bother a bald eagle a third of a mile away?
It might. I don't know.
Well, the road noise has to be above that thing, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Well, that's the thing is, you look at these other things that are at 80 or 70 decibels and kind of figure, is that how does that compare to the noise level? I mean,
Yeah, I don't suspect that you're gonna hear that very far.
But 75 decibels at 3 feet is like 64 decibels at 100 feet. The sound dissipates. I mean, it's
Yes,
And-
that's the thing.
And so the farther you get away, the less.
Well, I'm not seriously worried about it, I just thought we ought to ask the question.
Well, you do have a couple people that are very close by.
Yeah.
Vacuum cleaner,
More
80
coming in.
decibels. Lawnmower, 90. City traffic, looks like 78. So you're at 75. It's probably nothing to worry about, but I will distribute this. It's, whatever. I don't know how.
Is there anything to mitigate the sound, muffle the sound?
I know from work with other blowers, that's what this thing is. It's a blower. It shoots air into the tank and it comes out the vent. I know that you can put sound enclosures on blowers. So if it was objectionable, I think there's always something you can do. I've worked with blowers at
That's
wastewater
crazy.
plants, and you can put muffler, sound attenuation is what they, so. All right, we got through seeker. How about questions about the next steps?
Next step is to vote on the bonding documents at the next meeting.
Right, so Tom and I talked to Bob Hafner of Tom's firm, that if all went, if we got to the neg deck, which is what we did, we'd tell him about any changes to the report, and he would prepare the appropriate bond resolution document for your next meeting. I don't know, I guess my only question is, do you need me to come to that meeting or not? I
don't
would,
think
No, we don't, and,
I'd take up too much time, I think.
No, I don't think.
No, I think given what we accomplished tonight, I think it's Bob, I would ask to review the bond resolution. I think that's just a matter of normal course, just make sure that anything stated in there jives with the scope of the project. So I'll ask Bob about that, and other than that, I think
Who drafts that up?
Bob does. Yeah, that's really why he's hired. There's special language that goes in there. The bond resolution has to identify the maximum project cost. So we'll put for lack of anything better, we'll use the exact number that's in there now, rather than thinking about tweaking it. It'll also identify their maximum borrowing amount, and I'm assuming you're gonna want to say that the maximum borrowing is the 40%
Right.
figure, right?
Right.
Some communities would put it at the project, but that's overextending.
Right.
You can see that from
We
these
would never
numbers.
do that.
Exactly. So why bother?
Right.
So what that leaves you with is the 40% figure. I should have done the math. I didn't do the math. There's your maximum borrowing, and that's really going to control. So if you don't get your funding, that's the safety valve for the public to know that we're not going to go above that without having to do another bond resolution.
And is there a rough idea of when they would approve or disapprove the?
What happened last, I think it was like 4 to 5 months is after the deadline. Of course, they haven't even announced the program yet. I got you guys all ready to go.
Yeah. That's all right.
But I tell you, the day it comes out, anyone who hasn't done any of this legwork is not going to be able to get it done, because the bond resolution, you're going to do that at your meeting on the 16th. It runs its course 30 days after the date of that meeting, assuming you publish within, I think, 10 days. There's a referendum period.
30 days, yeah.
Bob will get you
Well, that is okay.
very much exact directions on that, is what he told me. The referendum period lasts 30 days. At that point, your bond resolution is effective, but just subject to what's called the estoppel period, and I'll let Tom describe what that is.
That's if anybody decides to sue us for having taken our action in an illegal way. The 30-day period for the referendum is if people disagree with your exercise of your discretion to authorize the borrowing. The 20-day estoppel period is to say you've done it incorrectly.
Right. So I guess, yes, a good reason to get started is if there is a demand for a referendum and properly submitted and all that, right, that would delay things, and it would delay you having an effective bond resolution until that went through the proper referendum situation. So, yeah, the only other thing I'll ask is, do you feel there would be a need for any dissemination to the public information meeting, or would that be?
If everything is subject to dissemination to the public.
All this stuff is available now. The question
And yeah, plenty of them come to the meetings, so yeah, they should be aware of what's going on.
What we'll do at the regular meeting is in addition to the bond materials that we got to do, we'll also let the public know that we've gotten this far. And this is what we've done. At some point, we'll probably have to put this online.
Sure, yeah.
But I'm not sure exactly when then it is. Maybe after that draft becomes the actual, then we'll put it on the village website and let people have it.
Yeah, just my experience is that if people know about it, have the proper information, they're less likely to make a fuss about it. You know, it's usually they make a fuss about it when they don't understand it and think it's for something that it's not. So.
When documents are going to be considered, they have to be available to the public before the meeting. When documents are enacted, they have to be made available to the public. The only thing that really doesn't have to be made available to the public is like interim drafts and so forth. But I've always found that if anybody asks for anything, if you give it to them, that's the best course of business, because as Mike indicated, you know, if somebody wants some information and you say, no, you can't have that, all the alarm bells go off, all the red flags go up, so.
So, again, if you feel something beyond what we've discussed is needed, just let me know.
That's great. I think we can move forward to the bonding material, and once we get that, Kim and I and whoever's discussing this will make sure we get it on the website with the proper icons, so people can just click on something and get right to it.
Yeah, and as that process moves forward, I'll just work with Kim in getting the application finalized and ready to go, and you know, I guess we got to wait for them to
Right, and we'll just sit back and wait.
wait for them to announce the funding and then move forward. Yeah.
Maybe we'll get Kim a megaphone. She can go walk around.
The funding is available.
And read the seeker. That'll keep people awake.
Well, if you read the project description, I think that's a pretty good project
Absolutely,
description, and you read that and you really know what's going on.
Yeah.
Is the Department of Health, I know you submitted what we're planning, are they willing, you know, 'cause by the time 5 months are up, which would be, you know, when we would expect to hear back about getting a grant, is the Department of Health going to be happy with waiting for us to do anything for this funding?
Well, the reason we're kind of moving this mixer forward is because it shows EPA and DOH that you are willing to do something. So in some ways, this thing you've already got going is probably going to be enough for quite a while, because if you remember, our schedule of compliance said we're going to put this thing in this spring and then wait a year. So my schedule gives you a year.
Okay, so the mix, we're on schedule to do the mixer this spring?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And if they grant this, we can go back and get money for the money we spent on the mixer?
Yep.
Oh, so we
Okay.
can go back retroactively? You did?
On the funding, you can.
Okay.
What Bob and Tom have made clear is that if you want to take proceeds from the bond resolution, it has to be stuff that's done after the bond resolution.
But assuming that the village
apply the funds.
spent money from the water fund to put the mixer in, if we get approval of this afterwards, we can take,
Oh, yeah.
you know, we can take $12,000 to $20,000 out of this grant and say, okay, here's what we spent,
Yeah.
even though we spent it before you approved the
Yeah.
project, because it was in the
Yes,
scope.
funding,
And then
yes.
And we can put that money back into the
That's
water
right,
fund.
that's
Okay.
right. And in fact, the best thing is when you make the resolution to spend money for something, you just say, we're gonna borrow it from the water fund and repay it with the capital project, is a lot of times what folks do. But it doesn't necessarily have to happen that way. It just makes it very clear that that was your intent.
Okay, is that it?
That's it?
That's it for tonight?
I feel very informed. Thank you.
Sure, and of course,
Any other questions?
let me know.
Well, I had a clarification question, because I may have misheard it. So why do you think the problem actually happened? Is there a shortcoming, did you say, on the filtering on their end, that they're maybe not filtering all the water through the carbon filters? Are you saying the water? Saratoga?
They did enough filtering to meet Department of Health standards.
Right,
The problem is that whenever the water and the chlorine sit together,
right.
the
The
numbers go up.
byproducts go up, right.
And because we have a big water tower.
It's collecting there, and that's where the issue is, and you have to mix
It's not
it.
collecting,
Okay, or it's building.
it's reacting.
Yeah.
It's, so in the wintertime when the water's colder, our numbers are always good because that reaction is much, much slower.
Oh, okay.
When the water's cold.
Yeah, there's less organics in the water.
Right,
And so when the temperature gets higher, I also assume that the chlorine
it goes,
interacts
more.
more rapidly.
And so the mixer basically mixes it up, which helps minimize the reaction and the byproducts, essentially? That'll create it.
The mixer will stop dead spots. I don't think the mixer is really gonna do it, but we'll see. But the mixer is a good thing and a good start to show good faith.
Right.
And it will improve your water quality as
Uh-huh.
far as there won't be dead spots, because when the water comes in, it's a different temperature from what's
Right.
in there, and
Right.
you can actually see the sweat lines in different levels of
Right.
the water and how it stagnates.
Right.
So the idea is by having a
Keep
mixer
it
in there-
moving,
If you
right.
have a mixer in there, that you make sure that no water in the water tank was in there for more than X amount of time.
Yes.
Okay.
If you don't mix, it's possible that water, because of what
That's
he's
right.
saying,
Uh-huh.
that some portion of the water sat there for 10 days.
Yeah,
you know,
which is,
and-
then it builds up the
and then it
byproducts.
could build
Yeah,
us higher,
yeah,
and then
right.
you take a sample, we don't exactly open up a water valve and say, oh, let's flush out 10,000 gallons.
Right,
So the water sloshes around, you get whatever comes out. So,
right,
So
okay.
the hope there is, I don't know if the actual moving the water around does anything to dissipate.
No, it doesn't. It just, as you described, it just avoids these hot spots, if you want to call them that, of the chlorine, where
Right.
it's reacting excessively with the organics and creating these.
So
It's a good thing, that much I can tell you. It stabilizes chlorine as far as it'll all be continuously mixing.
This mixer will probably, the best it'll do is just get you in compliance. You might
Just
be at
under
78 or
Yeah,
something.
that's in the worst time of the year.
And that's just what they're saying, is it might do it for you. It's a good first step. It's part of the 3-part program.
But the
It's not a
aerator, I think,
throwaway.
is going
The
to be
aerator,
more
yes.
effective.
That's the
Yes.
baby, yeah, with the ventilation. you have to have
But
that.
what would be nice is if Saratoga Water Authority
Right.
decided, well, let's not send our water out at 70, let's send it out at 30. They could do more. And
Is
it-
there any way to put pressure on them to do
Well,
that?
it's interesting. At one point, when they were having so much trouble with the water, and Clifton Park disconnected, and somebody else
It hit the papers
disconnected,
a little bit, didn't it, or
and
something?
a whole bunch of people disconnected from their system.
Uh-huh.
There was at one point someone came down here and said, well, if Round Lake has to do anything to fix their water system, the Saratoga County Water Authority might have some money for that.
Oh,
But But then once they spent all the money on the carbon filters and stuff, that was
the end of it for us.
There was
So-
like,
Oh,
we
okay.
never said
I
that.
think,
Oh,
I think
okay.
for
Is there
economy,
any other place that's having a problem with it? Or is it just, it happens to be, it
Oh,
just
no,
happens
there's
to
lots of places.
There are a lot, because I'm wondering if, you know, if there's any sort of collective pressure and say, look, we're all paying you money here. Why should we be footing the bill for something you guys should have been taking care of at your end? So we want you to
Well,
do something.
One of the problems is, from our last samples, the water is going, we're the ones with the bad samples. It's happening on our end.
Right, right.
Because of the residence time of the water being there.
Right.
And that's, and as Mike was explaining, the tower height, you can't adjust that because we have to keep pressure up at the higher elevations.
Right, okay.
And Saratoga County, Mike, you said you could work for them? Oh,
No.
all right.
Saratoga Water Services
Oh,
in
alright.
Malta.
You can't, I would have to know, I don't know what the percentage is of their filtering, but you cannot totally carbon filter water. It would eat the line, it would eat everything up. They'd have to treat it, it'd be, so they only do a percentage of it.
Right,
Just the same.
I heard that they only did a
But
percentage for
when the water
economy,
comes-
though. That's,
Yeah, I
From their
don't know,
pipe
that's what I don't
into
know.
our pipe,
right,
it is adequate.
okay.
Once it enters our system.
Because
and
of it being in the
processed by us
tower
and
and the
waste,
whole, yeah.
it becomes inadequate by the time.
Our
Prior to that
but
time,
if they could,
They were over the limit before.
Yeah,
they
before
put the
you-
filters in.
I'd be curious to know what the percentage is of how much water they do filter, I don't know.
it's all a mystery, so.
What happens
yeah.
if we cut open our water tower and put a big stainless steel ball in it so that it has the same height, but a much smaller volume? Would that-
That could work.
And it would be it's too bad we couldn't get them to put a better filter in, but it
We had
probably
hoped,
more,
this is what we had hoped
you
for.
know.
We had hoped that them, because Clifton Park is the big dog, we had hoped their, displeasure over the whole thing, their pressure was gonna get them to treat it low enough so that it didn't cause us a problem.
Right,
But
right.
Clifton Park's in good compliance, middle of the road, they're not close to the 80.
Okay.
But aren't they still also using their own well water down there?
They are,
Different parts.
they are.
Well, that reduces,
Yeah,
that water has no,
Except they have to, I think the way the tests are done now is it's locational running average.
It is.
before they.
So any place
They
they
used to be able
test,
to average all their readings, so Clifton
Yeah.
Park was always off the hook because their
They're so big.
well water was
Reduce it.
nearly zero.
Okay, so they
Because
reduce it, yeah.
it would need next to no chlorination because it had no organic material, it had nothing in it. It
Right.
was well water. Well, it had very high minerals.
Yeah.
Your dishes don't, your glasses don't turn all white anymore. But, that's what makes, so I think we should start putting rocks in the water tower. We'll just go up there and just start.
Should let it clean it.
We should just keep throwing rocks until.
I have a question too about the 80, which I know is the cutoff point, obviously, plus or minus or whatever. But and I know that's for healthy people, but how about if people have issues like in the community related to I know I have chemical sensitivity, so I can't drink the water actually. I have to use carbon filters, these special carbon filters. But if somebody has a compromised immune system, they have cancer, if they're pregnant, my concern is these ranges are for possibly normal healthy people, and what happens in the village.
You can go on, the Department of Health has a whole extensive write-up about acceptable levels and what the levels mean as far as the percentage increase in chances of developing,
It's pretty-
cancer and all that. You have to remember that the acceptable levels not too long ago was 100, wasn't it 120?
I know that had become reduced or something.
It was 120, and then they recently decided to go to 80, and it was
Right.
120 averaged, and then they went to 80 for all locations. It talks about the percentages. If you drank water that had 1,000 parts per million
Right.
for 2 weeks, you would have this 1/10 of 100% chance of developing cancer. 30 years from now, the impacts are there, but when you read the studies on there, they talk about situations where people are drinking water with counts of 10,000, parts per billion or whatever the number is, and you don't see any direct health effects. To me, it sounds like one of those things is that over 40 years, you increase your chance from your 1 in 500,000 chance to your 1 in 400,000 chance.
Right.
So,
But not at 80 parts, at
but 80
thousands of.
Well, 80 could be bad for someone has
I
an
don't
immune
know
problem.
if those byproducts. I would think people with sensitivity probably have more
I
issue.
cut myself, I got to go to the doctors.
Wow.
We drank this water for years and years and years and years with these contaminants, and the only reason they became an issue is because they simply changed the regulations to allow to go down to the parts per billion. So
I think if
is there
somebody with
really any danger
sensitivity
at all?
probably has more issues with the chlorine in the water than anything else. I mean, there's a lot more. I mean, if you're sensitive to chemicals in water,
I'm sensitive to a lot of things. I can't drink the water.
right? Well, my guess is it's probably the chlorine in the water because that's at a much higher level than the disinfection byproduct. I mean, disinfectant byproducts are parts per billion. What's our chlorination requirement?
It's free chlorine at the furthest point.
But what is the
Half a part per million.
Yeah, you're talking about half a part per million versus 80 parts per billion. I mean, we're talking about scales of
Right.
whatever.
Did you say you have carbon filter at home?
Yeah.
Then that John showed by a test that he put a carbon filter on the DPW garage and it pretty much came a non-detect.
Yeah,
For this.
we had,
Detect.
we were just replace, the way they have it set up is you have 2 of them, like for drinking, and you replace one after a year, you rotate them in, and it wasn't strong enough, so we have to cut it in half. So instead of once a year, we would have to do it once every 6 months, or what we're doing is more of a
What's that?
custom-made filter.
What kind of filter?
It's a carbon filter.
What point in the house is it at?
It's by the sink.
Your best filter would be right at the nozzle.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Okay, yeah.
We have it at the
anything that
nozzle
goes-
and at the shower and at
I've
the bath.
took 2 tests with a cheap filter carbon and an expensive one.
Yeah.
And everything came back non-detect. They couldn't detect anything.
Right.
There's nothing there.
Yeah, and it may be that we have to rotate in, it looks like we have to rotate in more frequently than what they recommended, because it's not, I think initially it was okay, but it's not anymore.
Yeah.
So we have to
Well, the
figure it
filters
out.
do reduce that stuff by 99 point something percent. We done?
We done, but not for the board. For
Okay.
Denise, John, Mike, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mike, I just thought you did a very
Thank
nice
you.
job in a very limited period
Yes,
of time.
thank you.
Oh, really nice work.
You're welcome.
I need-
Glad it's moving forward.
I need a short
I think even
executive
more
session
if we get the money.
That's right.
personnel.
If we don't get the money, then
Can I ask one thing of Kim? I do need, just like you're saying, you're gonna copy all these documents?
I'm gonna scan them, distribute them to everyone, including Bob and you, and then I'm gonna give the original to Kim.
All right, and that had the resolution, right?
Yes.
What all I need from you is this resolution from the seeker lead agency. You sent it, but it didn't have a date on it, so maybe if you just give me the meeting minutes that reference resolution 85.
November. I'm bringing them to the legislation. Yeah. We'll have them
November.
at February. Can I give it to you at the February meeting?
Well, we need to package this all up and distribute it, so can you just email it in the next couple of days?
Yeah, that's right. I can send it back. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.